When the lawyer said my grandson's name, he sat up straighter in his seat like a man claiming what already belonged to him. "Tristan Jerome," Mr. Calhoun announced, tapping the folder with long, bony fingers. "You'll want to listen closely." Tristan winked at his mother, who'd spent the last 15 minutes fixing her scarf, even though it hadn't moved since I walked in. Winked, like he'd already seen the number inside. Like this was a game he'd won before we ever started playing. To his left, Joylene smiled with that strained, polite kind of face people wear when they want to look present. And across the table sat Clara, the maid, still in her modest blue dress, hair pulled back, hands folded in her lap like she thought she wasn't supposed to be here. But me? I just watched, silent, still, like a piano key waiting on the right moment to drop. Mr. Calhoun flipped the page. Everyone waited. "To my grandson, Tristan Jerome," he began, eyes scanning slowly. "I leave. Nothing." The air snapped. Tristan blinked. "What?" Joylene jolted like someone had pushed her. The lawyer didn't flinch. "Ms. Ora Mae Jerome," he said, nodding toward me, "updated her will 4 weeks ago, with full attorney review. This version supersedes all previous drafts." Joylene sat up. "That can't be right," she said. "No," I said finally, my voice sliding out clean like a knife across cloth. "I didn't say, you asked. When I didn't speak, y'all started filling in stories." Tristan's laugh came out high and dry, like a balloon losing air. "There has to be some mistake," he said, standing up. "I'm her only grandson." "And you think that means something?" Aunt Shine snapped from her spot by the door, crossing one leg over the other like she was flipping through a soap opera. "Legacy don't skip over character, baby." His fists clenched at his sides. "You can't be serious, Grandma. You gave it to the maid?" "Her name is Clara." I turned, meeting his eyes. "And she never stole from me." Stunned silence. Joylene's mouth parted like someone had just poured spoiled milk into her tea. Tristan sat slowly, confusion ballooning behind his eyes. "I didn't know you knew," he said, softer now. "I was gonna put the cufflinks back." It wasn't the cufflinks. I said it with all the ice of a woman who had been quiet for too long. It was the debit card. The silence cracked. His eyes darted over to Joylene, then back to me. "That wasn't even look. I swear I just needed—" "You needed what? My grocery money? The gas card? The emergency fund I set up for your mother that vanished in a weekend at Gulf Shores?" I swept my hand slowly toward the table. "I didn't do this in a courtroom. I didn't threaten jail time. I gave you what you earned." Tristan stood again, this time less sure. "She's just the maid. She stayed." I said it sharply now, eyes narrowing like God's lightning. "She never raised her voice, never asked for $1, but brought me soup when arthritis chewed up my back last year. She pushed me to the hospital that night when you were at that business conference. She helped me figure out how to use my humidifier, sat with me through insurance-hold music while y'all were sleeping in hotel robes I paid for." Tears tensed behind Clara's glasses. She didn't speak, never did. "That's why this was hers now." I stood up slow. "You told somebody she was beneath you, Tristan. Some friend, some girl, who came back to me because she was disgusted. Said my grandson had no shame calling somebody else a servant in his own grandmother's home." I paused. Clara heard. She cleaned it up too, your mess, and still came back every week. I turned toward Mr. Calhoun and nodded. He handed Clara the stack. She took it with shaking hands. There at the top, final will and testament. Beneficiary, Clara Louise Harland. Tristan sank into the chair like it was made of water. "I built my life thinking all of this was mine," he said quietly. I walked to him and leaned in, "And I spent mine watching every lie you told about me." After the meeting, everyone filed out, except Clara. She just stood there shaking. "I can't take this," she whispered. "Yes, you can," I said, "because you know what it's like to love a place and never be recognized inside it. You don't owe me perfect, just dignity." She nodded once. That was all I needed. Outside, Mr. Harmon tipped his hat. "You good?" he asked. I smiled with no lips. "Oh, I'm just getting started." There were whole years when Tristan couldn't say grandma without smiling. He used to run to me after every school recital, after every scraped knee, after every nightmare Joylene couldn't shake him out of. And I'd hold him, not because I was supposed to, but because I wanted to. After Reuben died, that little boy made me feel like the house still had heartbeat. I remember the first time he slept over. 4 years old, scared of a creaky pipe. Crawled into my bed and whispered, "Grandma, I like your heartbeats. They sound safe." Back then, he didn't see me as a source. I was just soft, solid. Grandma, that was enough. And Lord, some part of me still holds that boy in my chest like a photo I never folded. They say inheritance is just money. But baby, inheritance is memory made into paper. And memory don't always remember you kindly. Joylene had Tristan when she was 24. The father didn't stay long. She bounced from job to job, never quite finding her rut. Me and Reuben had already built out this house on Rose Pine, 3 bedrooms, wide yard garden, screened porch full of green things. Paid off and titled. I never moved after he passed. I just moved the grief into the spare closet, folded into dish towels, and kept on. When Tristan was 8, my husband finally passed. Lung cancer bloomed and closed in a matter of months. That man taught me how to plant tomatoes and hide cash in furniture legs. After he passed, I planted one of his checks in a savings CD that no one knew about except Mr. Calhoun. And God. Built it silent. Let it grow like sweet potatoes. For a while, life settled into a rhythm. Joylene got a receptionist job. Tristan started piano. Every now and then, they'd visit for dinner. Sometimes he asked questions. "Grandma, are you rich?" "No, baby." "Then why do you give Mom money?" "Because I can." "But don't you need it?" That one stuck with me longer than it should have. Because I did. I needed it for things I never said aloud. For fresh teeth, for house repairs, for the trip to Savannah I'd been saving up for since before he was born. But I told myself it was temporary, that if I gave enough, maybe it would all come back in the form of love. It didn't. By the time Tristan turned 21, the boy I loved was large-shouldered and low-voiced. He stopped sitting with me on the porch, stopped attending birthdays unless a gift was waiting, started calling "Hey G" instead of "Grandma." It stung, but I ain't say nothing. I felt myself shrinking in my own rooms. That's when Clara came along. Mr. Harmon had recommended her after his sister passed, said she'd helped nurse her through after-stroke recovery. I didn't even want help at first, but my knees wouldn't scrub like they used to, and lifting laundry made my lower back sound like somebody crumpling coupons. Clara came 2 days a week at first, then 4. Then I caught myself getting up just a little faster on the days she was here, because her presence made the whole house breathe easier. She didn't ask too many questions, but she noticed everything. She never told me, "This is your job," when I offered her food. She didn't sit at the dinner table unless I asked. And when I had a dizzy spell one morning at the stove, she didn't go get my phone first. She checked my hand for warmth. That's when I realized not all loyalty is loud. The turning point came 6 months before I changed the will. Joylene called, voice hurried. "Ma, did you take any money from the emergency account?" "What emergency account?" "You know, the one with $2,000 for building repairs." "There ain't no account like that." "Oh," silence. Clara raised her eyebrow from across the room. Later that day, I went through my paper files and found 3 debit transactions I didn't recognize. 87. D, E, S, E, N, E, R, H, E, O, O, D, E, E, P, E, N. Sewanoff and designer hoodie pin 326. Weekend reservation, Biloxi. $900, something called VZN Auto Detail. Next to them, my debit card. I'd left it once in the drawer by the side lamp. Didn't even notice it was gone for a weekend. Until now, I didn't say a word. That Friday, Tristan came by. Wore a jacket I'd seen from one of those purchases. Wasn't from no clearance rack either. He leaned back on my sofa, smiling wide. Put his feet on the ottoman Reuben built with his own hands. "Hey, G," he said, "you got any snacks?" I sat across from him slow. He scrolled through his phone, thumb tapping fast. And I just looked at him and saw a stranger. Clara came in quietly from the kitchen. She looked at me. I looked at her. She didn't need to say anything. She'd been there through it all. Not just for me, but to see. I let Tristan take the snacks that night. Let him hug me with one arm, leave with a kiss that barely touched air. Then I walked to the filing desk and opened the folder labeled Legacy. Reuben had started it in '93. I slid out the printed will and reached for a pen. Clara wasn't supposed to hear what he said. But glass carries sound real easy, especially when you don't respect the hands behind it. Tristan was standing on the porch steps that overlooked the driveway. He was on the phone, pacing. One hand in his pocket, the other flinging up like his outrage had an audience. "She's getting worse," he whispered, not low enough. "I mean, she don't even check her card statements. Maid's probably taking stuff too. Y'all think she's loyal, but all she want is that house when Grandma kicks it." Clara had just stepped outside to shake out the mop. She froze. He didn't see her. She turned, stepped quietly back in the house, and came to find me. Didn't say much at first. Just handed me the mop back and said, "Best you keep this near the window next time, ma'am, so you can hear what your name sounds like in his mouth." I didn't ask for details. Her face told the whole story. He came by the next day as usual. His tone was sugary. His smile, witless. "What's good, G?" I was slicing okra, didn't pause. "If loyalty was a meal, I wonder what you'd ask it to taste like." He blinked. "What?" "Never mind, baby. You hungry?" "Nah, I got food in the car." Food in my car, most likely. That night I sat at the desk and opened an envelope I hadn't touched in months. My husband's original asset ledger. It listed the acre of land in Mississippi, 2 retirement accounts, some cash in a safety deposit box, the house. He always said, "Give legacy to someone who stretches it, not someone who expects it." I ran my fingers over the word trustee. Then I called Mr. Calhoun. "Draft a will change," I said over the line, quiet. "No problem," he answered. "Beneficiaries removed or just adjusted?" "Tristan's out, Clara's in." He paused. "The maid? Are you certain?" "She's not the maid. She's remained. That's more than I can say for the rest." I could hear the lawyer's respect adjust through the wire. The next morning, Clara found a sealed envelope on the kitchen table with a pink ribbon on top. Inside was the new draft. Her name on it, in ink. She tried to place it back in my hands. "I can't accept this." "You already did." "I didn't do nothing for this." "You did everything I needed done right. That counts." Later that week, Aunt Shine stopped by, brought her usual sweet tea and judgment, sat heavy on the porch like she was waiting on a storm, and had prepared snacks for it. "They don't see your value 'cause you stopped holding a broom," she said. "They think generosity got a fuse you ain't allowed to clip." "I don't owe 'em warning," I said softly. "Nope," she grinned. "Just consequence." She sipped her sweet tea like it was pre-war hydration. "I say you don't just cut him out. You build a fence where his name used to be." That fence came 3 days later, figuratively and literally. I replaced the kick plate on the front door, changed the locks. Clara installed cameras with the tech guy from Dollar Zone. She paid him herself and refused reimbursement. Signed the updated will at the bank with Mr. Calhoun as witness. Watched Marcus show up uninvited the next Sunday. He brought Ania and a bouquet from Publix. I hugged him. But all I saw was his silence whenever Tristan's behavior passed across our table like cold food no one wanted to reheat. At dinner, Clara served greens and cornbread. Anya, age 8 now, looked up with her big tender eyes. She said, "Grandma, why doesn't Tristan look at anyone when people say house now?" I froze. Joylene's fork stopped midair. Marcus coughed. Clara, still serving plates. Patient. Nothing disruptive, only constant. That night, after they left, I sat by my garden fence with my thermos of sweet black coffee and waited for the guilt to show up. It didn't. Just wind and calm and me. The quiet before the expectation ends and justice begins. The letter was delivered by hand 4 days after I signed the final draft. Marcus brought it, didn't look me in the eye when he handed it over. Didn't sit, didn't take his coat off. "Tristan found out," he said. "Must have called Calhoun's office." I nodded slow. Nothing like betrayal to make short tempers and long silences meet in a man's jawline. "He's threatening to contest," Marcus added. "He says, Clara manipulated you." I took the letter and set it down on top of a folded napkin. Didn't open it. Didn't need to. There's nothing inside a tantrum letter that can ruin a woman who's already read indifference at her own dinner table. "Do you think she did?" I asked gently. Marcus looked me in the face. His eyes dipped. "No," he muttered, "but he's not thinking straight." I poured him water. "You let him talk to people like me for too long," I said. "Now he can't hear truth unless it's trying to save him from fire, and even then he'll still ask if it's warm enough for his comfort." He didn't drink the water, just stood there like it had just dawned on him this wasn't going to end with everyone okay. 3 days later, the first text came in. "Tristan, 8:42 a.m. I hope you're ready for how this looks to everyone else. Then again. Tristan, 12:57 p.m. Legacy dies if it ain't passed down. Your name dies with me. I didn't reply. Not because I don't carry anger, but because I carry standards. And ain't nobody named Jerome gonna scare me with a DNA-based guilt trip. Joylene showed up at the house unannounced the next afternoon. Clara was mopping by the kitchen. Joylene asked to speak to her privately. In my house, in my kitchen. Clara didn't look startled. Didn't put the mop down, just nodded, kept working. Why didn't you say anything? Joylene asked low. All these years and you just took this from my son? Clara only said one thing. I took nothing. And kept on. Marcus came back around that night. This time he sat. And he didn't bring flowers or casseroles. Just his hands, and worry stuck in his sleeves like cold air. Ma, I looked at him. What's truly happening here? I folded my hands in my lap. You ever feel somebody peeling off your spirit one piece at a time until you're empty? Standing in front of the same people who smile like they love you, but only want to claim you? He nodded painfully. I didn't want to believe you at first, he admitted. And now? He looked at Clara. She was humming while putting measures into my pillbox. Glasses sitting on the edge of her nose, chin tilted firm. Now he saw her. Finally. She noticed the attention, paused for just a second, then kept going. The next morning, a letter came from Calhoun's assistant. Contestation filed. Tristan hired a litigation firm. It wasn't a surprise. He'd blown through all the credit lines and couldn't even fill out tax forms. But he managed to hire people who could spell my name and phrase it like a liability. I sat with Clara after breakfast. She looked at me, face clear but throat shaking. I can give it back, if this gets heavy. I smiled. I wrote you in because you never once asked for anything just because. You showed up. You stayed when my body forgot how to move, backed away when my grief needed quiet. You helped me feel human again without titles. That's worth more than family with flawed memory and full pockets. She teared up, turned away quick. Respect ain't loud, and that's why this was hers. 1 week before the hearing, disaster came dressed in local news. An elderly heiress rewrote her legacy, cutting her grandson from a multi-million-dollar estate in favor of a longtime housekeeper. Sources say the grandson plans to challenge the change in court. No names, but everyone knew. Mr. Harmon stopped by the church Sunday with raised eyebrows. They trying to make it seem like you lost your mind. I smiled thin. They lost theirs when they started trading heartbeats for headlines. At the court hearing, Tristan showed up in a way too expensive suit. His lawyer was all charm and beige folders. Clara sat at the back row behind me. She wore the dress I bought her from the Willow Hill catalog, pale plum, neat ballet flats, hair pinned smooth. Marcus sat beside me. It was the first time I felt like my child had come home wearing empathy instead of excuses. Opening statements threw everything at us. Manipulation, elder confusion, lack of clarity. They cited my age, camera installations, sudden document changes, and an unusually close bond with a domestic employee. Clara sat up taller, didn't flinch. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slow. Let the courtroom hear every joint creak. Let 'em count every wrinkle. Let 'em look long enough to know my face, because they'd never forget it. I didn't cut family out of my will, I said plain. I cut out the noise. Half the room stirred. Legacy isn't just passing down names. It's about deciding what values survive you. And Tristan's was a mirror I no longer wanted this house to hold. I turned toward Clara, who kept her head down, hands folded like always. I gave my legacy to somebody who held me upright without ever trying to hold me hostage. That ain't manipulation. That's honor. The judge took 2 days to decide. I spent both of them knitting by the porch and drinking habanero honey tea while Ania read poetry beside me. The verdict came in plain envelope form. Contest denied. Will upheld. I sat in the swing that evening, the heat just starting to rise off the wood. Clara came out with a fan and a small bowl of cold peaches. I looked at her, just nodded. She sat beside me, and for the first time, we were both seen. Not as grandmother and maid, but as two women that no one, not even blood, would break again. The porch felt different, like the boards had unclenched something quiet after being stomped on for so long. I wore my softest shawl, the one Reuben gave me when my hands used to hurt from ironing uniforms and worrying all day about whether I had enough soup in the fridge for guests who only came with full hands but empty hearts. Clara was inside, finishing dishes. I told her to take the night off. She said, "I will, right after I clean what don't need cleanin'." Some people don't know how to stop being good. The wind blew slow through the screen, carrying honeysuckle and what felt strangely like peace. For once, the only drama near me was in my wind chimes. I held the verdict letter in one hand. It wasn't about the ink. It was about what wouldn't be rewritten anymore. Tristan hadn't called since. Joylene texted this morning. "I don't agree with everything, but I think I finally understand." That's as close to "I'm sorry" as I'll get, and that's all right. Marcus stayed quiet about it all. He just brought me a pie this morning and sat across from me like it was Thanksgiving, and all we had left to give was time. I could live with that. I looked up at the stars. Then I talked, not to the Lord, but to myself. "Girl," I whispered, "you really did it. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted a mirror again. One that didn't reflect debt and demands. One that didn't call giving love a transaction. One that finally showed me I had been enough." The truth is, I mourned Tristan for years before I ever removed him from my will. If you've ever had someone call you family when their silence says storage unit, you know the ache. I kept thinking he'd come back, that he'd remember who rocked him when his mama couldn't. He didn't. And letting go of that hope felt like losing him a second time. But this time, I set the funeral date. Not for his life, for mine, the one I was finally ready to live. Clara stepped out with 2 glasses of strawberry tea. This time she didn't ask if she could sit. She just did. I nodded. "Everything in line?" she asked. I held up the paper. "Judge says my mind's fine, my memory's strong, my conviction's stronger." She grinned, smaller than most, but real. We sat there for a while, just sipping and listening to nothing. Not the buzz of voices asking for money, not the sound of footsteps coming to collect, not the anxious glance at missed calls that could shake a whole week. Only stillness, and the creak of a porch swing finally breathing. Ania came by earlier with a picture she drew. A house with a woman at the door smiling. Another woman holding a mop. "Who's that?" I asked. She shrugged. "Sometimes I see y'all both doing the same thing." I looked again. The mop was gone in the second panel. Clara and me were sitting down, passing lemonade across elbows. "Got room for one more person on this porch?" she'd scribbled. "Baby, if that ain't poetry, I don't know what is." So yeah, I rewrote my will, but I also rewrote my peace. I rewrote the idea that love means borders fade when money's involved. I rewrote the rule that you gotta die before you're honored. I rewrote who deserves the key, not just to the house, but to the memory. I used to be scared that my legacy would die in silence, that I'd become someone who was taken for granted and buried soft. But you know what I learned? Sometimes silence ain't death. Sometimes it's liberation. It's the absence of begging to be seen. It's the inhale after years of transactions. It's sitting on your porch with nobody waiting to raid your refrigerator the minute your voicemail plays unavailable. If you've ever been somebody's everything when they saw you as a thing, let me tell you something. You're not bitter. You're finally accurate. And if someone you raised forgets what your voice sounds like unless there's a wire transfer involved, let them replace that silence with their own echo. They only call you selfish when you stop being useful. But baby, I stopped bleeding from love they never meant to return. That's not selfish. That's recovery. So now I got one question for you. One little thought before I tuck these curlers and let the world shrink small again. If someone in your life stole not your money, but your dignity, your peace, your worth, would you confront them, or quietly? Would you remove their shadow from your light? Tell me below. I want to know, right here on Tales of Ora Mae.